Well, welcome back to the Hit It podcast. Super special guest in the studio here with me today, Corey Vaughn. Corey, welcome to the Hit It podcast.
Thanks, Tyler. Great to be here. I've been a loyal listener, and with the guests you've had on, it's an honor to be here with you.
That's right. And, I tell you, Corey, our history actually goes way back. And so it's going to be so fun to recap all of these things, go back to our junior days and what you're doing now. And we've had slalom skiers on the podcast in the past. I mean, we've had Chet Rayleigh, we've had Chris Lapointe, we've had Nate Smith. We had from different angles. We've talked about ski design, we've talked about technique, we've talked about how to take on the slalom course. But really, what I wanted to focus on with you today is your story, because your story of how you became a professional water skier is really unique. And I think it's going to relate to a lot of the listeners out there. And so, where I want to pick up with that is, from my understanding, you started on a public lake, and obviously now you're one of the best skiers in the world. Let's take us back to that period of time when you got started in the sport.
Yeah, well, I guess to go back to the very beginning, it was a family affair, and they put me on the water when I was 3. I mean, I think I wanted to, but I saw my mom doing it, my grandparents doing it, my aunts and uncles water skiing, and it was just kind of natural. So that would have been 1988, and I think at that time it was actually probably pretty common to be getting started on public water. I think maybe what's less common is to go from there to here. But we were just a family that loved being on the water, in the boat. We rode every type of thing that we could get our hands on from Overton's, tubes and knee boards and wakeboards and skis. But we definitely had a passion the most for slalom skiing, and eventually got an Insta slalom course and figured out how to put that thing in and out. We took it in and out every week just because,
Wow.
People that are public water skiers, they know about the struggles of maintaining a course, not getting it vandalized or making someone angry, just keeping it in one piece. So we pulled it out every weekend. We kind of drop it in late Sunday night, try to get a set before the sun went down, and then pull it out we do a Friday morning set and then get it out before the weekenders started coming into town. And with all the PVC pipes and the buoys and the spool of rope, there were many a family quarrel as things started to go awry, laying the course in and out. But that's what we did. And the other thing that was pretty unique in our situation, that just shows how crazy we got for this, for just some folks who had a mastercraft and a love for skiing. We had to wait 6 minutes in between every pass in our cove because there were bulkheads, like seawalls, on both sides. And so the only way to get pretty much calm water was to take the ski off, start a running clock, 6 minutes. And of course, that's only if someone else didn't manage to, come into the course, like a jet ski or a pontoon boat or something like that. And then we'd have to reset the clock. So, I always want to let people know how appreciative I am for my grandfather, especially. He was my main ski partner. And for me to get like a 8-pass set in, back when we were juniors, like in the boys 2 days, that was like an hour and a half process for me to do one set. And but I mean, I'll be darned, he was willing to do it.
Yep.
He wanted to do it. So those are great memories.
Yeah, that's interesting to talk about the challenges of public water with the slalom course, because a lot of these lakes, sometimes you have to find a cove, a place, if the lake is really big, to where the water is, smoother than it would otherwise be. But the story, I'm kind of just laughing here thinking about, 6 minutes on the platform just for the water to get skiable, because it can get so choppy out there, you can't even pull out for a gate.
Right. I mean, so eventually, I would say somewhere in like the boys 3 era, we had our course was getting into kind of a state of poor repair, and we were getting a little tired of the in and out every week routine. Of course, this was only the summer. I was also only a 2.5 month a year skier, up until college, and then I got a little bit longer season. But so yeah, we got it in when we could. We put that course in and we skied whatever it took. But we did somewhere along the line eventually get a submersible course. So we had an air compressor on it. We always set the course up in front of our dock, like in our cove. And then at least that one, though, we could kind of put up and take down
Mm.
more with the push of a button, and that did improve things. But there, of course, there were still a lot of challenges, and it took a lot of commitment. But it wasn't, when I think of commitment, I'm feel very committed nowadays to what I'm doing in the skiing, and sometimes turn it into almost work, because I want these results and I want to strive for them. Whereas then we just wanted to have fun, and putting that course up and down, that was how we had the most fun. So there's not even a question about it. At least we were all on the same page. It wasn't like one person was putting in the course for somebody else. We all wanted to ski that thing as a family. So that's what we did.
Very cool. So, the challenges of getting into the sport with, a slalom course on public water, and then figuring out what the slalom course is all about and how to go through it. What led you to competition water skiing?
Yeah, so that really came in from my uncle. He gained some more curiosity. He was the best skier out of all of us, when I was especially a wee little guy. And I think he went off to a ski school somewhere down in Florida. He was getting the magazine. He knew there was more to it than the nothing that we knew. And he went somewhere, took some lessons, found out that there were competitions, found out that we were skiing in North Carolina on a public lake, but that nearby in Virginia there was a pretty active tournament culture. I think he kind of did the legwork and figuring all that out, and he urged us to sign up for a novice tournament. So my mom, my granddad, my uncle, and we all entered. This was 1994, the Fawn Lake Novice Tournament, and actually that tournament took place on a big lake also. It's a private homeowners lake, but I mean, it's miles and miles long. So it was probably a little closer to what we knew. It didn't seem like, what I know now about private ski lakes. So we showed up there, not a clue if we would be good, bad, average, just wanted to go and check it out. And as it turned out, all four of us won our age category. It was like boys 1, women's 2, men's 2 or 3, and my granddad was like men's 6, and everyone was like, wow, you guys are not bad. Where'd you come from? You ought to come to the States. So as you know, and as most of our listeners who are involved in the sport know, we fell right into this wonderful community of people. Everyone was very welcoming, very friendly. We kind of were like, okay, I guess we'll show up at the States and see what that's all about. And so that was our first taste of an actual, like a real private ski lake, Lake Holly in Virginia. And we turned up there, and once again I did okay. Like I won states, and it was like, okay, well that's cool. They're like, you ought to do the regionals. So anyway, one thing led to another, and here's a good story for all the juniors out there who have had some traveled somewhere in one of their first regionals or big tournaments, and have met with a less than desirable result. My first regionals ever was up in Maine. Only time in my life the Eastern regionals have been in Maine. So about as far away as you can get in the region. We flew up there. Boys won, all new at this, a bunch of new people, stuff we didn't know, equipment checks back in the day. We were trying to figure everything out. Anyway, it becomes my turn. It's a little rainy. I go out there, pull out for the gate, go through the gate, fall right there, 1 ball in the water. Whole trip to Maine, I was a 1 event skier, and that was it. And I felt, of course, about wee big. But I tell that story a lot now because I coach a lot of kids, and you know as well as anyone, these things in our sport, they're just going to happen, and that's not the only time that's happened to me. But I like having those stories to be able to relay and tell the kids, look, one day you're going to be telling somebody, hey, it's okay. Look, this happened to me too. And anyway, fortunately, I had some better regionals in the years after that.
Sure. Well, it's so interesting to talk about that because, our paths would eventually cross in 1998. But back then, we didn't really have the internet to check the scores. We weren't really seeing tournament updates. And so you would hear through the grapevine of how skiers were skiing at regionals, and sometimes states to regionals. And then obviously for the first time all year, you would get to where you were ranked on the running order when they would post it at nationals, and everybody's around the board. I was thinking about those days too. Just how different it was when you showed up to nationals, where you would go through safety check. And remember, you'd get a sticker on your life
Yeah.
jacket, you'd go through this whole thing, and it would really build up to where am I seated? Because at that point, you finally had your first ranking nationally to go look at and say where you're going to ski. So it's boys two, it's 1998, and our paths crossed for the first time. And I just wanted to hear it from your perspective because it sounded like we talked a little bit about it offline, but it sounded like that may have like started the appetite to take skiing pretty seriously.
Yeah, I would say, it's funny that we're here together today because you do have this sort of maybe oversized role in my whole water skiing journey that goes back to 1998. And what you're saying is exactly right. We had the rating cards, you'd have to go get it filled
Yeah.
out by the chief judge and the scorer. And again, we didn't really know what we were doing. I went to 3 nationals as a junior, once in boys 1, once in boys 2, and once in boys 3. And we just weren't really aware of, some of the other, like team trials or junior US Open or things that was just in a whole different world that we didn't know anything about. And so, like you're saying, I only found out 3 different times as a junior kind of how I stacked up in a national sort of way. And I think in that 98 nationals, I'd skied pretty well. I think I won my regionals that year. And so we're going down, and I think I was ranked in the top 10, but not some sort of, heavy favorite, or I don't think I was ranked for the podium, maybe like a 7th or 8th seed sort of guy. But it's a special memory for me in a number of ways. It was the only water ski tournament where my grandparents and my mom were at pretty much every one of my water ski tournaments, but I had a long distance relationship with my father, and he really wasn't at any of them, but he flew down for this one, which was, it was very out of the ordinary thing to happen. So I had my grandparents, my mom and dad all in one place at this water ski tournament. And I went out there and I skied well. I think at the time it was a couple buoys at 32 off. And so I took the lead at like the 7th or 8th seed. And then we stood by and watched as one person after another just didn't quite get there. A couple people missed their 28 off. And then a couple guys got like 1 at 32 off. I think somebody got like a 1.5. And it comes down to who else but top seed Tyler Boyd comes out there. And I think you smoked like 4 at 32 off. You didn't really leave any question about it. But at the end, for me, it was actually a great victory. Like to come away with second,
Sure.
that was huge. That was more than I was bargaining for. I didn't really know what to expect going in, but I was quite pleased with that. But so you kind of loomed as this figure in my mind for probably 5 years until the boys 3 nationals. Is like, okay, well, this guy, he's the guy to beat. And I would tell myself the story, but he's down there in Texas, he's skiing more often than I am, he's got longer than a 2.5-month season. So what that did, I think, was just reinforce my belief in my potential. Was that I'm skiing on a 1981 Mastercraft with my granddad, with this jalopy course with waiting 6 minutes. We got no pre-gates. We're just kind of this. My equipment is kind of piecemeal stuff that I've gathered over the years, but it's not like what I see today. Everybody's kind of fresh, got all the right stuff. I never was the kid that had all the right stuff. I was sharing a life jacket with my mom, and
And that point of the story, that's why I think it's so important, right? Because there for a variety of reasons, people come into the sport. Some for my reasons was it was just part of like the day I was born, I was going to be at the lake, right? For other people, they just kind of stumble upon it. They have to be a part of it, or whatever the story is. Your story is so unique and special because of where you started on public water, and you're looking at the mid 90s where I think the sport is making this transition to more residential type of neighborhood skiing, right? And certainly there is a huge advantage to doing that, especially when you're training on public water. But for you to come into a tournament like that with that type of background, to put that kind of pressure all the way up to the top seed, I mean, that speaks volume of where you were from a talent standpoint. And then it was, this path, and we talked a little bit this the other day is, you make these journeys through the junior ranks and you start to see the talent develop. And then there's a point of decision, right? Am I going to be a regional champion, which you were already at that time? Am I going to try to be a national champion? Or maybe even more difficult than just being a national champion, can I be ranked in the world as a slalom skier? Tell us a little bit about that journey, because our paths continued to cross throughout that time, but you also skied for the University of Clemson, and then there was another decision point. And I just remember watching Corey Vaughn, man, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13. I mean, it was like this rocket ship that was blasting off, where it was like, man, this guy is in the hunt at everything he enters on a professional level. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's interesting, just the way we've had this conversation. You can see we skip ahead quite a long ways. Like I had some success at the junior level. I went back to the nationals in boys 3. I got a 3rd place, which I was again very happy with. It was a little higher than my seed again, and then going to Clemson for college, I was excited about that because it was going to give me the opportunity to ski a slightly longer season for the first time, not just kind of only be constrained to summer break and go down to the lake for summer and then come back to school, and that's the end of it. And I would say, to answer your question about that journey, there's this thread of kind of maybe blissful naivete that has worked in my favor, because I was so far removed from the inner workings of kind of knowing what everyone else was up to, knowing how good everyone else was skiing. I had these couple of touch points, boys 2, boys 3, and I did pretty good. But then and then I'm in college, and that maybe could have been a little more humbling, because we went to collegiate nationals. I never did anything particularly outstanding. I got the chance to ski against guys who I'm skiing against now, who are really, I think, already on their path to greatness. I mean, obviously, Will Asher, I think we overlapped 1 year in college. I remember watching him and just being like, oh my gosh, like we're not even doing the same sport. And a bunch of others, Sledge and Matteo Luzzeri and, Thomas de Gasperi, I think we overlapped a year also. I mean, anyway, a bunch of great skiers, Cale Burdick, Ian Trapp, that I wasn't even comparing myself to them, because unfortunately, or for whatever it is, I don't change anything. I wouldn't regret anything, but I wasn't that focused on skiing in college. Once I got there and boots on the ground, I realized the message from home was you got to focus on your academics. That's what you're there for. Ski, it's nice that you get to ski, but that's not really, there's no future in that. I heard that a lot, because frankly, it was the early to mid 2000s, and the pro skiing wasn't a viable career choice, really. So I don't fault my mom and my grandparents from telling me, like, well, you got to think about what you're really going to do, because this childhood dream, how are you going to make a living with that? So that was kind of the reality I lived with. And the thing that was going on around me in school primarily was a lot of, well, frankly, partying. Clemson does a lot of that, and their team is not, nationally competitive in the way a ULL or a ULM or an Alabama is. So we're kind of a party team that likes to ski, and so I already knew how to ski, so I wanted to learn the other side, and I maybe got a little too competitive with that. I really didn't make any progress in my skiing for 4 years at college. I had fun. I was part of the team, and in short, I graduated college kind of like a 2 or 3 at 38 off sort of guy. I mean, that's nothing that compared to, my the guys who I was skiing against then and who I'm now skiing against professionally. I mean, they were already, running 39 some of the time, but I wasn't aware, like I wasn't comparing myself to them. I just kind of was in this other world. It wasn't until I had graduated. Well, I should insert in here too, part of the story. Halfway through my college journey, I got offered the opportunity to be a summer water ski coach for a family. That's the Whitlock family, and that is the lake where I currently live and run a ski school. So kind of a happenstance meeting, coaching their kids at junior development turned into, in a way, the story of my life. So in short, in 2007, I got to spend my first summer on a private ski lake.
Mm.
As you
Wow,
said,
that's a run right there. I mean, so your
yeah,
first competitive tournament is 1994, right?
yep, yep,
94. And so you're really not training on private water until 2007.
yeah, not at all.
Wow.
And in fact, it had kind of gotten so frustrating um, by kind of that freshman sophomore year of college that trying to train, like I kind of just realized the gulf between what I would be doing skiing on Lake Gaston where I grew up and then showing up at a tournament. It just felt like apples and oranges. Like we had this old boat, this course with no pre-gates, there's long wait times, rough water, all these headaches. It just, and then I'd go ski a tournament and it didn't even feel like I could prepare. And consequently, I started skiing less and less just because it wasn't rewarding. I couldn't replicate my results. And anyway, so yeah, so 2007, all of a sudden, there's kind of this, all of a sudden, this fuel just gets dumped on the fire. I spend an entire summer on a private ski lake, and that is game changing. I'm getting to coach water skiing I'm making some money by coaching water skiing. It's just like my mind is blowing, and I'm getting to ski like a new boat. It's got, up to date cruise control. I think it's still perfect past at that time, but like current boat, controlled conditions, and I started to actually, get a little bit better in that summer. And then that was 2007. And then the next summer, I got to do the same thing. After I graduated in 2008, I got to coach for the summer, ski a little bit, and I was making a little progress. Like all of a sudden, I'm starting to creep up and run some 38s just in the local tournaments. But that felt like a big deal. We were still on the rating card system, and there was still no national ranking list at this time. And so what I knew from the guidebook was that an open rating was 1.5 at 39. And you needed to do that in a record tournament to get your open rating. So what that told me as I was starting to get that score in a Class C tournament was like, well, I'm close. I didn't know how everyone else was doing it. They were, passes ahead of me. I just thought, and my mindset was, I would rather be the worst pro skier, finishing last place than the best amateur skier. Just kind of like being a kid that played a bunch of sports. I was like, well, you'd rather get drafted and kind of be, a third string guy than, working at the car dealership or something like that.
I gotta pause right there. I love that mentality, right? I love that mentality because sometimes with athletes, and kind of going through the same path you did as a junior, and I've seen it over the years, that's a blessing and a curse in a way to experience a lot of success as a junior, because once you get to boys 3, men 1 to open, you realize that this is pretty difficult. And sometimes you're not experiencing the success that you might have experienced in the past and may have trouble with the mentality of, well, I don't want to compete at the bottom, even if I'm on the professional level. You're in the complete opposite of that boat. You're like, bring it on, man. I'm just happy to be here and I'm ready to compete.
That's right. That's right. That was my thought. So, what I had lined up for myself, I did have a job lined up at the end of that summer. I coached and skied through the summer of 08. And then it was kind of like, okay, now it's the real world time. Everyone's been telling me that it's coming. I was very fortunate that actually some friends through water skiing had offered me a job in their company. And it was 2008. Many of my friends didn't have work lined up. It was a hard time with the economy. So I was proud and happy to at least kind of be independent and making a paycheck and so forth. But, I kind of went into the winter. I'm going into the office. I'm getting my paycheck. I'm spending it at the bar, just kind of meeting random people and drinking beers on Thursday nights and singing karaoke with a bunch of strangers. Like, not exactly, I'm kind of wayward. I don't really have a path going right there until somewhere in that office about this time of year, like a January, cold, miserable January day, it dawned on me that summer was around the corner and the families that I had been coaching are going to be out there at the lake skiing. I'm going to be in this office or out in the field working, and I'm going to be making about the same amount of money that I would be if I were coaching, except I'm going to be doing something way less fun. And by the time I get off of work, no one's going to be at the lake to pull me, and I'm not going to get to ski. And kind of this little bit of progress that I had made is going to vanish. And it was I was just nipping at that open rating enough, and I was just clueless enough to know to not realize that just getting an open rating doesn't, I knew it didn't mean anything about money. I had no thoughts about making money as a water skier to any, at this point in my life at all. But I wanted to get that. I wanted to call myself an open skier. So, somewhere I did a lot of soul searching. I definitely faced a lot of fear of failure, that if I walked away from, a good, honest paycheck and told everyone I'm going to go be a pro water skier, and then I just kind of landed flat on my face, meaning, okay, I got the open rating. I went to a couple tournaments, but, and how was I going to support myself? That was a big question. I didn't have an answer really, but my passion for this sport and that little child inside of me that flipped through the pages of the Water Ski magazine and, and looked at the likes of the other guests you've had on this show, the Andy Mapples and the Chris LaPointes and you name it. I was like, maybe I could, just kind of be almost a little bit like that. And it was enough to make me make the change. I left work the last day of February of 2009 and decided I'm a pro skier now. What did change at that point was my lifestyle a bit. I started studying about nutrition. I started working out. I realized that I was probably pretty far from what was required to be a professional athlete, and I think, even much further than I realized. But I made a transformation. I started a transformation right then, and then the only first record tournament that I could find in the Eastern region was up at Twin Lakes in New York in June. And I was like, okay, I kind of circled that, put a bullseye on it. Like, that's my opportunity to get the open rating. I got to go up there, record tournament. It's 3 rounds. I've got to just get a 1.5 at 39. And then the dream is beginning. So it's kind of a funny story right there. Just a little aside. Went up there, first round, show up at the record tournament. My handle is long. We checked before, and I realized it didn't measure in. And so they gave me a club provided handle. I went out there, got to 38, money pass. Okay, here we go. Come around 2 ball. I feel this snap. Handle breaks in my hands. I'm in the water, but I wave at the judge, get a re-ride. They find another handle, slap it on there, take me to the end of the lake, come in 38. This time it's 4 ball. I got clinchers on at the time. I've got terrible technique. I'm just burying my shoulder at the buoy, kind of grab the handle in the middle. That one breaks. We try again. We get the 3rd handle, get back out there. I'll be darned. 2 or 4 ball at 38. I don't remember which one. I get on the handle. It starts to bend. I can feel it. So I just stand up out of it, and I just hold the handle up to the boat crew, and they can see that it's just completely folded in half.
So 3 handles in a row?
3 in a row. Yeah, it was wild.
No way.
Yeah, it was crazy. I think I was just so juiced up, and the clinchers and the bad form. Anyway, they actually sat me down and they pulled the men's 1 division, the rest of it, and said, okay, just like, we're going to find another handle. In fact, what they did was they actually put a fit in mine, got mine the right length, sent me back out there. I ran 38. I'm like, oh, my handle didn't break. I was like, all right, here we go. 1.5 at 39. Go out there. I'm all jacked up. In the water at 1 ball at 39. I was just like, oh, after all that, I didn't even get over to 2. But happy ending, 2nd round, 2 at 39, got my scorecard filled out. And in my mind, I went out for lunch, and I think I had a cocktail, and then I went and skied the 3rd round, and I was just on cloud 9 because I believed in my head that now I've made it. As silly as that sounds to some, maybe, to me, that was a huge deal.
Well, and we'll pick up on the rest of that journey here in just a second. I think you bring up and highlight a point, and I think this podcast actually does a great job showing with some of our guests their stories and the level of commitment that it takes to be a professional athlete. And I sometimes think that that's unknown. I told you the other day, I had taken 3 years off to play football in college, and then I attended the University of Louisiana Monroe, and I showed up on the dock, and there's 5 world champions there. There's Regina Jaquez, there's Natalia Bernakova, there's Ryan Dodd, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And I realized at that particular time, I didn't understand the level of commitment that they were already at so early in their career. And like listening to your journey, now that you've gotten the open rating, and you've already made a lot of dramatic changes, right? You've already made a lot of dramatic lifestyle changes to get to that point. What's the next stop and where you're like, wow, I really need to raise the bar again?
So, well, at first I had like a little nudge forward, and then I had the humbling reality about raising the bar. So we're in the summer of '09, get the open rating. I'm feeling healthier than I ever have because I actually am eating properly. I'm taking better care of myself. Getting a little stronger, getting my third season of skiing on a private lake. So that alone is just really helping. Um, and I go to my let's see, this would have been, I went to one boys one, one boys two, one boys three, one men's one. I go to my fourth ever nationals. Fifth ever nationals as an open skier. So now I'm on the dock with Chris Parrish, Chris Rossi, Marcus Brown,
There you go.
John Travers, Seth Stisher. Like I remember just being, I kind of my tail between my legs, like over in a corner, just looking at these guys because they're people I've seen in the magazine. I mean, shoot, sometimes even today, even though he's one of my best buddies on the tour, I look at Chris Parrish and I almost cower away a little bit, cower from the tower. But I was kind of just this fresh faced guy that nobody really knew, and I didn't know any of those guys personally. Thankfully, I've gotten to become good friends with many of them. But anyway, I go out there. My granddad is with me. The two of us down at Okehili. It's kind of like old times, just like similar to that boys two feel. We got the family thing going. We're at Okehili, and I go out there, and once again for a nationals, like I performed to my level. I ran I think 2 at 39 at the nationals, which is kind of right there with ran the 38. Pretty big deal for me at that time, and it just so turns out that was enough to sneak on that fifth spot on the US. We have the five medals at nationals. So my first open nationals, I get this medal, and then standing above me is JT, Marcus, Chris Parrish, and on the top, Chris Rossi. And I'm just like, I'm with these guys. Like, oh my gosh, it's happening. I mean, needless to say, like Rossi ran 3 at 41 and I ran 2 at 39. So we're still in very different ballparks in a sense. But my feeling was, the story I'm telling myself is, I'm coming, I'm here, I'm closing in, I'm catching up. So then, fast forward about 3 weeks, a month later, there's the California Pro-Am, my first ever true pro event, international, full field sort of a deal. And I show up there. I've gotten myself just worked up to be nervous as heck. I think, doing okay at the nationals made me put extra pressure on myself that like now I should be at a certain place or something. And I don't know, the nerves got the better of me. I missed 38 one round, ran 38 one round. Very, not great professional skiing and not personally great skiing even for myself. And I finished, towards the bottom of the pack. And that was kind of that wake up call that you were asking about. Like I was like, okay, we got some climbing to do from this point.
Yeah, no, and so it's I always think of Okehili. It's like almost like when we were doing the boys too. It was like the end of the day, the sun was setting, conditions perfect.
Yeah.
So when you talk about being on the fifth spot with all of those guys, like the perfect day at Okehili. I know a lot of our listeners have been to Okehili for the nationals. I love that story, but you do find yourself in a different league when now you're at a pro event that's international. So, you're not going to make the podium with 2 at 39 anymore. And the next real memory where our paths cross is I think we're probably 2011-ish, 2012, probably 2011 in Milwaukee, Veterans Memorial Park at the Malibu Open. There is a massive rain delay. And I don't know, I think I had seen you throughout the years when you were at Clemson, but it was like one of those spots in time where you just get to know a person better because we're sitting under this tent and I'm trying to announce the event. Well, I'm like, well, I'm not announcing and we start picking up. We start talking about all these types of things. And what really struck me about that, Corey, in that conversation, you don't come across a person in their life very often where they are just so dialed in and focused on a mission. And I could just tell, like, this is a different person. Like, this guy knows what he wants. He's here. He's hyper motivated about that. But take us through that period of time, because you kicked it up another notch.
Yeah, well, so we'll take one step forward from that. That my very first pro tournament, my second ever pro tournament was the following year, 2010, Michigan, the Global Invitational, happened to be the first pro tournament for this other guy named Nate Smith.
Ah,
So our careers kind of began at almost exactly the same time. We had the same rookie season, and of course, there's slightly different trajectory to his and mine. But here we are still, and so he jumped way up real fast. So I saw that happen right in front of my eyes.
wow.
He kind of came out of the dark, and then the next thing you know, he's running 41. Right there in front of us. I think that year, 2010, was his first one. So then by 2011, like by the time that you're speaking about, I've been looking up to Will Asher and Chris Parrish and Chris Rossi and all these guys that I thought I'm going to run them down. I'm younger and I got a lot of catching up to do, but I'm improving. My steps are coming along, and these guys are, they've been at the top. So that how much further up can they go? That's what I was telling myself anyway. But then I watched Nate kind of do this meteoric rise right in front of me. I'm like, oh boy. So and that's just a little bit of fate of the universe. You get paralleled with a guy like that. Geez, I think he was 18 and I was 24. So I also realize now he's younger.
Yeah.
And so I've got to play catch up to this guy too. And so what, as I see these, I keep going around to tournaments like that one and basically kind of getting my butt kicked, but realizing that the only way that I'm really going to be able to go out in these events and excel and perform to the level that I want to is to put myself in that position, to put myself in that hot seat. If it means getting kicked in the teeth and coming back home and figuring out how to go to the next level, then so be it. And I mean, that really is the case. I think the one thing that I've always been very strong on passion. I mean, that's kind of carried me most of the way, I'd say. And I think maybe I thought that it could just do everything, just passion and motivation alone. But like anything, I mean, there are qualities of being a professional that you have to learn. And I think, maybe some of the experience some of these other guys have had of traveling, and learning to just show up at a tournament, go check your equipment, check your fin, have kind of a game plan for how you're going to travel, be near the lake, and, have all your ducks in a row so that you can stay focused. Those are lessons that I learned slowly over time. And I'd say I'm in some ways still learning. But I don't like to lose. But I was showing up at these things, putting myself in a situation where I pretty much knew that that's what was going to happen. Always, trying to ski my best, hoping for the best. And that definitely always kept me, like what you pointed out, focused and motivated. I think just a lot of times I didn't really realize where I could be placing my attention to get the most return. It was like I could work out harder. I tried to make my body stronger because you can at least kind of see that, feel that, you're doing something. But some of the other intangibles, I think that those are things that it's taken me, and perhaps I'm a slow learner, but, I've been on this tour now for about 14 years. And really, I think even this past year for me, I'm just starting to get to an understanding of how to approach tournaments and how to tap into my focus at a level that many others found far sooner. So what you saw and what you're speaking to, I think, is just I had push, and I've been pushing, push, and that's what I told myself. Like, come on, you're not going to let anybody outwork you. You're not going to let anybody, try harder. And in many cases, I feel like that's true. I've been giving it all that I've got, but some of it I think has kind of gone nowhere. It's not applying it in the right way, and so that's something that I'm still trying to refine.
That right there, Corey, is a huge lesson. I don't think we've touched on that in all the podcasts we've done when we've talked about training. I mean, you can work really hard, but that does not necessarily mean you're getting the greatest return in the areas you're going to need to be successful. And crossing that chasm between having the passion and the work ethic to become a professional athlete, and then learning how to balance it with the technique. Because you not, I mean, we could go into preparing for a tournament and all that kind of stuff, but along this journey, your technique is just unbelievable to where you are now, to being one of the only skiers in the entire world, in the entire sport, to run 41 off, right? So talk about where hard work got you and how it developed you into a slalom skier that could ultimately run 41 off.
Yeah. So just like I'm saying, showing up at these places, coming home with, I think, the results, not only say if I placed middle of the pack and I wanted to be in the top 10 or on the podium or in the money or whatever, in the finals. I've had many of those coming home from the trip, didn't make the finals, spent a lot of money, brought home none. And just kind of like, you have to keep asking yourself, well, what am I doing this for? I'm having these disappointed, heavy feelings. I'm losing money, and I just keep doing it like this is some sort of mania. And I just keep, trying to grind harder, try harder. To answer that question for myself, it's always come back to, in some way, this sport connects me with those days on the lake with my grandfather and my mom and my family, and that child inside who dreamt big and wanted to speak out loud that he wanted to be a pro skier but didn't dare to do it. And then even just to get the chance to be on that stage, I think for too long I was overly impressed with just being able to be on the same water with the Chris Parishes and the Will Ashers and the Jamie Beauchesnes. Right. I was like, oh my gosh. And just to be on the dock with them and to get to talk with them, Marcus Brown, Terry Winter, Chris Rossi, these guys were very friendly to me, actually. And that made me feel good. It was validating in a way that spurred me on, versus the results. I wanted the results, but in some way that was enough for me that I just kind of was like making friends with, rubbing shoulders with these guys. I started to get to ski with, Andy Mapple eventually. And I think so, in some ways, instead of really drilling into, hey, tell me all the things that and he did share a lot. And that alone is a big part of, running 41. I did it on his ski after all. But just getting to be in his presence, he invited me to come to his home. I stayed in his house and to come and demo his ski. And then eventually kind of the same thing with Chris Lapointe. We became friends and I began to ski with him. Like, just, I'd be pinching myself being like, I can't believe that I'm hanging out with these guys. Like, these are the guys, and I think some of my focus was a little bit too much on that. And then it was like, okay, well, I'll just, I'm going to work myself hard in the gym and work on technique myself. I've had sparingly little coaching over the years. I've spent, you had Chet on here. He's kind of who really the only exposure I had to a true, like, professional slalom coach as a junior. My grandparents took me down there for a few summers for about 3 or 4 days in like the boys 3 type of era. And he kind of like blew my mind, as Chet pretty much always does with someone. But I was just like, wow, there's way more to this than I realized. And he's also been a big mentor for me in how I want to approach being a coach also. But then it wasn't until much later, getting to ski with the likes of Andy Mapple and Chris Lapointe, that and getting to spend actually a season at Ski Paradise where a bunch of guys were coming through, the Seth Stichers of the world, that I got to at least glean some ideas off of people. I mean, it was still kind of me, better off on a private leg, but trying to figure this stuff out on my own, watching people that are better than me and trying to figure out what they're doing. And maybe that kind of suits me. I don't know, because that's just been my approach, but I'm mainly self-taught. And I would say that actually coaching at all levels, from literally the deep water start up through, the juniors that I coach at the national level or adults, all those levels, having to verbalize what I'm seeing and kind of learn the mechanics of the sport. Basically, I had to learn that myself to be able to coach it. When I started, I was kind of a fake it till you make it sort of guy. I was learning as I was on the fly. But year after year, summer after summer, season after season, I feel like I started to gain a truer, like a worldview of how the sport works, and then could try to apply that myself. And then there's always kind of been this, you asked about work ethic. There's always been a little bit of kind of tension between, I run a ski school. I started that in 2010, the same year as kind of my rookie pro season. And there's been a bit of a tug of war between, focusing on the business and focusing on the training for myself. And that's an ongoing thing. That's everybody trying to figure out that balance.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I perfectly answered your question there. That was a little bit of a tangent, but I think still I'm endeavoring to be the hardest working skier out there, but I'm trying to be a little bit smarter. Like I've actually written up a 3-year plan for myself. I'm 1 year in at this point, but I actually have some framework and something to organize, some structure to guide that process, rather than just throw stuff hard at the wall, see what sticks, and get yourself exhausted in the process.
Yeah, and that's exactly a perfect segue to where I want to go, to where you are now. I mean, listening to your entire journey from boys 1 all the way up to this skier that runs 41 off, incredible journey. But the journey's not over, and there's a plan, and you have a plan in place. And now as you're sitting back, organizing your thoughts later here in your career in incredible shape, incredibly competitive at all the tournaments, have a shot at the podium at every one of them. You do realize that you're probably in a position where you're like, but I am getting older a little bit, right? I don't have forever to figure this out. Tell us a little bit about this 3-year plan. You're into year 1, but kind of the motivation that's pushing you into this 3-year plan and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really started with my 2022 season. I felt was pretty disappointing. I just never really went out there and performed the way that I thought I could, up to my own potential. Results aside, I thought that I just kind of let myself down. And there's a number of reasons for that. I felt spread very thin. I was learning about balancing my life now as a father. I had a 1-year-old at home, which, as you know, as you've done, 3 times over, is just and once you have twins, you did it 2 at the same time. I can't even imagine, buddy. Hats off.
Hey, I wasn't a professional skier though.
Nonetheless, I can't hardly imagine, but I was, anyway, I wasn't as focused, I wasn't as energetic, and I just didn't go out there and perform. And I got to the end of the year and I had those kind of heavy letdown feelings, like, what are you doing this for? Especially because in many cases I had to travel away from my family. I had to leave them to go to a tournament, and I felt somewhat selfish in a way. I felt guilty about it. And so when it came to the balance, I got to thinking to myself, it's been a good run. I have a couple of really, some good successes, some things I can hang my hat on and say I had a good run. It was a lengthy career. And I can just maybe go into skiing for fun and run the ski school. And if I'm kind of holding these 3 big things: family, being a father, being a husband, running a business, water ski school, and being a competitive, pro athlete. I was like, man, it felt like something had to give. And I was like, I can't give on the family. Like, that's not going to work. Can't give on the business. Like, that's not the answer. So really the only one that felt like, it's the ball that could be dropped and kind of was being dropped was my own pursuit. And so I sat with that, but man, I just could not stomach it. It didn't sit right with me. I've just felt like that same, and maybe it's naive, maybe it's not, that same little voice that through the years was like, no, there's something more in there. There's potential that you have not brought through yet. And I want to know what that is. So I thought, well, okay, if I'm going to keep going, then I've really got to do this right, because I can't keep feeling spread so thin, and not like I can't balance all these parts of my life. I can't keep going out there and basically spending money to get results that just make me feel disappointed. So I need to organize my thoughts a little bit here. I started, I told myself the same transformation that you made in 2009, when you kind of went from being a post-college, drinking at the bar, bumming cigarettes sort of loser, sorry, to deciding to be a pro skier, and you made a shift. We need to do something in that order of magnitude. I need to do something in that order of magnitude again. And I'm very fortunate this time that I have a partner, my wife, who is supporting me also every step of the way. It's really been a blessing and truly amazing. But I was like, I need to put a time horizon on this for myself, because as the years go by, to keep the fitness up, to keep the hunger, the motivation, the intensity, it doesn't get any easier. It takes more work each year. And I don't see myself being able to do this in a balanced way 5 years from now. It's just, I'm looking forward to being able to take a step back and saying, you know what, I did all I could. And I just have to accept what it was. But I thought for 3 years, I can get better. I can get better for 3 straight years. I had just read the book Atomic Habits, and it kind of had this idea in there about incremental, like 1% improvements every day. And that idea really grabbed me, kind of the right idea at the right time. And that influenced the way I built this plan, and it had a number of facets, and there's no way we're going to get into all of it. I mean, a big one, the overarching idea was, instead of these 3 pillars of my life pulling me in opposite directions, spreading me thin, I need to find a way to create a synergy so that they are all, I need water skiing to basically be my spiritual practice that makes everything else, like lifts me up and lifts everything else that I'm doing up, not takes me away and brings me down. And I need the other parts of my life to be synergistic to feed that water skiing. So, I mean, one of the big things that I did right off the bat, one of the first things that went down the plan was I realized that I needed to quit drinking alcohol. That could be a much bigger conversation, but basically that had kind of been there with me the whole since college. And as hard as I worked, I know now that I did a lot of self-destruction at the same time. I didn't count it as that in my mind. I had plenty of justifications for, I worked so hard that I could afford to play hard too. But in hindsight, that was really just the mindset of an addict that wants to keep doing what they're doing and not reckon with the truth of the matter. So that went into effect last January, and man, that has been a net positive all the way around. And I mean, a number of lifestyle factors, like that as well. Just tightening up on my nutrition, trying to wear devices and just get curious about my sleep. And I started seeing a sports psychologist just about a month and a half ago, just bringing in other modalities, things that I hadn't been exercising before, or like I said, may have been working hard in a particular domain, but then leaving, kind of have some blinders on to other things that may have helped me, or that I could have been open to. And so I'm trying to incorporate those. There's more to come. Like this year, and a big new thing will be working with a sports psychologist. We've had a few preliminary meetings. I'm very excited about that. I think there's going to be some benefits there. He's got me practicing some mental imagery, things that I probably could have been doing all the way along. When I look at it, I'm 38. And I think some of the kids now that are like 18, 20, these super achievers, these high performers, I think they already have this mindset that I'm only learning now, almost because they didn't distract themselves with all the temptations of adult life first. They're kind of like on a fast track. And so I'll be darned before they all run me down. And like I said, shoot, Nate jumped out there. We got on the scene at the same time, and he has obviously been the best skier in the world since then, with no arguments. But as audacious as it sounds, my plan is to step on the stage with him, all equal conditions, and be able to go out there and take a win at least once.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. No, and it has been tremendous blessing for the sport that we've gotten the opportunity to watch you guys compete, through the water ski broadcast company. We were talking about the days when you couldn't really understand who was who and where people was ranked. Now I feel like we're as in tune as we're ever going to be, and it's only going to get better because we can really keep up with. I mean, we watched everybody travel over to Europe for a bunch of pro tours and then travel back, and then of course the World Tournament. And so this conversation really highlights something that now we can carry with us this interview into this 2024 season as we watch you compete.
Yeah, and of course the Pro Ski Tour, Pro waterskiprotour.com website too has made
Yeah,
it so great to
absolutely.
follow. Yeah, when I think back to kind of where things were as I was coming into the scene in 2009, we were almost close to our in 2010, that was almost the low point. Actually, Dana Reed had just fired up
The
the
Malibu and
Milwaukee and Michigan
yeah,
stops. That was like a good new thing, but that was, his passion was driving that. And then, of course, sadly, we lost him. And we were just kind of lost. The events were not connected. It was hard to track and follow, like you're saying, the results and what was going on. Of course, the webcasts were nowhere near the level of the
sure.
TWBC. So, yeah, we're having a moment right now. And I know basically my plan is to retire after 2 more seasons. That's not to say I won't ever throw my name in the hat at a pro tournament or a nationals or something, just for fun. If I'm skiing well, like that would be great. But to make it a 365-day a year obsession, which it currently is something that I will put down and walk away from. But I want to stay involved and see this momentum that we have built go to the next level, because I feel like we are just on this side of a threshold point of breaking through to something bigger. We now have the broadcast quality, both in terms of the videography and the commentary, to bring it to a wider audience. I think we need to work on our formats, and we have the website so people can follow it. You can actually know when things are going on. I think we need to think about how we package it a little bit differently, so that it's quicker, more action, more entertainment. For those who want to watch the all-day event, cool, but we need to come up with a truncated version for the average spectator. And I think we can get into that market. And I think we can get some high-level sponsors interested in sponsoring the tour. And like I said, I won't be there for it on the skier, the athlete end, but I certainly hope to see it, because the sport deserves it. And I hope these young, talented kids that are coming up now, maybe they can ride this wave up. And I don't know that it'll get back to the glory days of the 80s and into the early 90s, but I think that we're poised to take a step up, and I'm so excited to see that happen. And if I can be part of it, then I hope I can do something.
Well, yeah, that's certainly encouraging, and it's been so fun to watch it. And I can't wait for this season to see what we're going to see again. And the greatest asset that is part of that pro tour is the athletes. Like you're saying, this is a 365-day a year job where you're constantly training, you're constantly scheduling, you're constantly trying to put yourself in the best position to win. And we have the people like yourselves out there competing and battling for the top of the podium. And nothing's better than that type of level of competition. With all of that to be said, I ask all of my guests, Corey, I water ski because.
I water ski because it makes me a better person. And that may sound trite, or worse yet, it may sound self-serving, but when I get right down to it, it's the thing that makes me show up for myself, gives me the motivation to take care of my health, eat right, exercise, get sleep, have the energy to run around with my 2-year-old, and my wife loves these things too. So thankfully we get to do them together. We get out and explore and travel. And I think beyond that, well, touching on that, water skiing has always been for me a family affair, and still is. My wife is my driver, my training partner. We ski together. My son started last summer. He's same tied together skis off the beach, just like I did. My wife was driving, I was holding the rope, so that was kind of a magical moment.
And we're like moments away of being back in Okahili, except we're going to be
uh,
on the shoreline and our kids are going to be skiing against each other.
we're gonna be the dads with the coffee. That sounds pretty nice, actually. I'm excited for that. So there's that family side that just brings families closer, and there's just so much joy that can be shared there. And then I think the third one, we touched on it too, is the community side. Water skiing orients me into a community of people who by and large are wonderful people, in many cases inspire me to try to be more like them, to try to be a better person like them. And also by being involved, it compels me to show up for other people and to be a part of the community, to
Sure.
contribute in that way. And the fact that water skiing can touch that many parts of our lives, And I think those are all net positive. So in my mind, like when I started my ski school in 2010, a big part of the mission was to grow the sport of water skiing. That's almost like to me, it almost feels like a moral calling. Like the world
Right.
will be a better place with more water skiing in it. There'll be more joy, there will be more health, there'll be more smiling faces. And I feel very thankful that I get to see those, throughout the ski season here in Virginia.
And the beauty of that is, I mean, you've carried that for longer than a decade, and you came up with the slogan "Peace, Love, and Water Skiing," and I guess that's where it is, right there on your shirt if you're on YouTube. So, with that, Corey, I want to give you a handoff where people can find you because you got the ski school going on, you're coaching, you're traveling. If people want to get in contact with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, I'd love for anyone to reach out. You mentioned Peace, Love, and Water Skiing. That's my Instagram handle at Peace, Love, and Water Skiing. Facebook, my name, Corey Vaughn. Also, my website for ski school is peaceloveandwaterskiing.com. And I think that has, social media links. You can find me that way, it has my email. Yeah, certainly get in touch, come out and ski. We'd love to have you come for a visit. We got a place you can stay right by the lake and get some good swerving in. And I love that. I love meeting new folks, and then also, having friends that I get to see year after year through ski
Yeah.
school.
Well, Corey, this has been an amazing episode, and I think there's a lot of big takeaways. And if any of those listeners out there are finding themselves on public water and they're trying to figure out how to get into the competitive scene, I think this is an episode that they could listen to a couple times and take away some powerful tips. And I think your story and almost along the way that I've gotten to admire your journey and your willingness to train and your passion and just such a positive light for the sport. I want to personally thank you for that. And I really do hope that we're the dads on the side of the shore at a nationals. And this time we'll probably be more nervous now, with our kids
Yes.
skiing.
Oh,
But
100%.
yeah, I look forward to that a ton. So I really want to thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, well, thanks, Tyler. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. And yeah, that's what you said. I'll just leave any of the kids out there, everyone's journey is different. Mine is mine and everyone's is unique. But if you have a passion, and it could be for water skiing or something else, if your heart cannot hear you say no and shut that down, which is what I tried to do. I tried to shut down that no, I can't really be a pro water skier. I did that for years. And eventually I had to let that break through and say, yes, I'm going to try. If you're feeling that inside of you, answer the call, say yes, take the journey. Even if it doesn't go where you think, it might go actually even better, or it might lead you to where you need to be. But try to answer that call.
Excellent. An excellent word from Corey Vaughn. Make sure to check him out. Peace, love, and water skiing. And until next time, we're signing off.